This September 1st, 2020 budget workshop of the Hendry County School Board. Our workshops are more informal than our regular meetings, and so this is an opportunity to let people in the public know that coming up on September 8th, we're going to have a meeting where we'll have a budget hearing, and depending on what we can work out with this budget here, it's going to go for a hearing and approval by the board on the 8th. So this is an opportunity for us to get together. We just received the proposed official budget, and to go through this with our CFO and superintendent, and take a look at the proposed budget. So that being said, Ms. Riccardi, do you have anything you want to present prior to?
I do not have a presentation.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so you guys want me to lead off, or okay? Oh, so you would say so. Yes. So my process on this was there's a few things I was trying to do on here, see how far that we were off of our tentative budget, and look at what we're allocating and what we spent last year and what we're budgeting for this year. Now, this budget is, for those who've served on the board, I think everybody's seen budgets of the past. This is a different format. And so I want to start with the letter. One of the things that I read in this narrative was, and it has been touched on briefly where we were talking about our dental fund, and then it outlines here in the letter that we're at the current we're covering $7 a month is their premium. And so when I started looking at that, I went back to page 38, and the allocations from this would be generated through by the board for employees, by the employees, contributions from the employees for their dependents, and for retirees it would be for them, they're paying the premiums for themselves and their dependents. Our actual, if you look up, I need a dot cam. If you look in this column right here, the far column, in actual 18-19, we had 583,000. Our actuals for last year were approximately 378, and we're budgeting 524 this year. My question is, I would like an explanation of where this approximate 200,000 went.
That would be me, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You're asking for which number?
Okay, well, on page 38.
Right. You're looking for the 377?
At
377 is actual. That is, we stopped collecting from the district because we're so overfunded. We stopped collecting from the district, I think, for about 4 months this year. That is considered a legitimate use of funds, if you will. We just stopped contributing to it because it's got over $1 million. And the contributions restarted this period.
So, if we are over in that manner, why would we be raising the fee structure for retirees?
Good question. We're not raising the fee structure. We're raising the fee structure for retirees, the long-term plan, and I've not presented this to the board yet as a whole because I haven't solidified my rate structure how it should be. I'd like to work with our dental consultants, our dental plan consultants, but right now the retirees pay $7 per month, and the monthly cost is $4.95 just for administrative fees. That means that somebody else, that would mean the district in this case, is paying for the claims for retirees. Are you following me? Mm-hmm. So when we are contributing for, and I'll pick on me, when the district is contributing for my dental, you're not just contributing for me. That $35 that we're contributing for me is not just for me, it's paying for the claims of the retirees. It is probably not a good practice to keep people on who are not paying for their own dental coverage. That creates, of course, a long-term OPEB liability that you don't want. And it's a benefit that we're not really declaring. So that to me is something that needs to be corrected. I did an analysis, and what this will do, my calculation will decrease, basically everybody who has single family coverage should be right about $28. So that means that the district, for me, or whoever else has it, would be $28, and the retiree would also pay $28. So basically, everybody would be on a level playing field, as opposed to the $35 for employees, $7 for retirees.
For what?
$7 is what it costs for a retiree. So does that kind of answer your question? My goal for this budget has to be, in fact, it has to be, we budget $9,000 for every employee for their health, life, and dental. Life insurance would stay the same. Health insurance went up 2.3%. My goal is to decrease the dental portion for employees, with the offset, of course, being the mark that the retirees, so basically balancing that out. But then we've also got to increase the amount for life insurance, which is going up or health insurance, which is going up 2.3%. So that happened after the fact. We'd already talked long ago about how it's a completely imbalanced structure that I have no idea where or how or why we would come up with $7 for retirees and $35 for employees. It's a completely imbalanced structure.
Well, my concern would be like when we, and many of our retirees are on fixed incomes, and my concern would be going back to them and saying, hey, we're gonna raise these from 7 to 28. And then them coming back and say, well, you know, what happened here in 1920? Why is that so low, or why are you not collecting this?
Right, and you can see we operated in a deficit this year because I did that. So that the purpose of that is to show, first of all, I was trying to equalize. I'm starting to equalize by decreasing the amount that the employer contributes for the employees. So that's got to be done. We're going to do that. But the offset has to be, if you're going to get participants in a plan, they need to pay a fair share, and $7 per month was not a fair share.
No, and if I could, Madam Chair, if I could
Yes, sir.
add, okay. This needs to be addressed, and this is your bailiwick, okay? It would be easier to gradually move in that direction than all of a sudden say, you're paying 28.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, you're
Yeah,
absolutely
so
right.
my recommendation would be, when this comes to the board, that you implement this, because we have a past history of about 12 years ago, where all of a sudden we quit subsidizing health insurance, and health insurance cost reflected the cost, and automatically overnight, Mr. Sammerline probably remembers this, we dropped family coverage like that because people said, no, we're not going to do it. If it had been, and that was the recommendation at the time, to implement gradual increases in that, then we probably would not have had that severe a drop, which frankly we have not totally recovered from, only until we have done some changes in our insurance company where the family coverage had made it affordable. So the risk to go from $7 to $28 is you're gonna have people drop. So when you look at it, I would suggest you look at it as an incremental piece and not to do it all in one fell swoop. So when we had talked about that before.
I actually knew somebody had mentioned it to me, I forgot it was you, that
Yeah.
had suggested that it be a phased-in approach, whether it be 2 years, and that is go from 7 to maybe 18, maybe then 28, or go do it in a 3-year program. So absolutely it is, because as you can see with this surplus fund balance.
Or
it's
figure
okay.
out your way and run the numbers and see how it works, you know.
I don't have a way, I'm just asking
Okay.
questions as it's coming up and just.
But what I'm saying is, by saying that, I meant, figure out, you wanna go up $3 1 year, and each year until you get that, and see how that works, $2, $5, $7,
Well,
come
then
up
people
with
can
that.
plan for the future, they're gonna know, okay, next year we're going to
Yeah.
increase X amount, X amount.
Because I'm gonna be in that group of retirees
Right.
also,
Okay,
and I feel at this point that I can plan for that.
right.
You know, and I would hate to hear retirees drop dental coverage at the time of their life when they might really start needing it.
But it's also an unfair competition for us, when the marketplace right now for anyone, if you want to get dental coverage, will probably be $20 to $30 right now. So it's an unfair addition to the marketplace for them to, why would they ever leave when the marketplace has such a high figure compared to what we're offering?
What did we actually, the revenues on this? Was it the 377, 826?
Mhm, that's all
Okay,
it
that's what
is.
you collected?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay, all right, that's the first one.
If you would like to give me some guidance, I've expected to bring this forward in October or November, if that's, and if
I
you'd
would
like,
prefer December.
if you'd like December, could be a better issue.
Oh.
December is good with me. I think the only issue is we would implement it along with the other, any rate changes go into effect, according to my understanding, January 1. So,
And Ms. McCarty, could you talk about the transmittal letter in and of itself? Because I believe this might be something that's new to the board,
It is new.
of why it's there.
Sure. First of all, this transmittal letter, the purpose of a transmittal letter is to introduce the CEO's budget to the board. It is part of it is one of the requirements of the MBA program, which is one of the things, as I think I told you earlier, I'm trying to get. It's the Meritorious Budget Award. What a Meritorious Budget Award is, it indicates that your budget provides information. It's not just data. The data that you all want, you said we changed the budget, the data that you've always gotten is still there. So the center of the budget document still presents it exactly the way you've always gotten it, because that right there is great information too. But over time, you have evolved. You've become more interested in other things, and this document needs to evolve to do that. The introduction to the budget, there are certain requirements within the MBA requirements that your letter of transmittal include. I missed some of it because obviously it was my first time preparing it for the school district. But in the long term, this would be something that you would look for to get your big overview, your big picture overview. Let's see, my favorite part is, let's see, yeah, usually I would go a little bit more into the risks factors, because I think that's the risks and the current economic factors is something that when you're reviewing a budget, especially when we're doing the proposed, perhaps not so much for the final because you're already there, but when you're looking at the proposed, you're going to say, did the boss consider, did my boss consider this? Did they consider the fact that the state of Florida is doing this? Did they consider the fact that this is being constructed? And that would be the type of analysis that we would be able to write in this letter of trans for you.
So on the second one under budget highlights, you talked about at the board workshop, several items were discussed, including eliminating certain contracts. What contracts were ultimately eliminated on that?
I did not bring that list. We did discuss though. There were very few. For example, and I'll give you the one that I even made an amendment to after the fact, and that's our Vanguard contract at my office. As you recall, one of the things you talked about was, when you saw that, what are we doing? And I said, we're going to decrease that contract to only 2 or 3 days a week. At the last workshop, board member Basquin questioned my department specifically why my rates went up, why the cost went up, and although I do have a justification for it. One of the things I did realize was that I could still cut that contract by about $10,000 because I was not using it for July and August. We were using our facility maintenance contract for so little in those 2 months. So that was one of them. I think one of them was bear with me, truant officer? Wasn't there a truant officer?
I have the list right here in front of me.
Oh, you do have it?
I do.
Oh,
I keep my
okay.
receipts. We had $60K for teen parent daycare. That has gone up in the budget. And these were, examples of purchase services and things that could, the contract shop foreman, some software maintenance,
Okay, we didn't cut the contract shop foreman.
the Clewiston Park contract,
What?
The Cluid, the
Right, we
50
didn't cut
grand that goes for the baseball field.
Right, we didn't cut any of those.
Neola, Digicert, truant officers, contracted services for assistant superintendent, 120 in travel. Avid, pest control services, facility maintenances, copy contracts, footsteps to brilliance. And one of the things I realized, some of these weren't generally funded
Right.
to be
footsteps
cut.
brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it's to be cut, and so you can't cut what you can't cut.
But the city of Lewiston could be renegotiated. If that's something that the board feels should not happen.
I mean, I feel like we talked about a lot of things. We've given the directive that we want to stop overspending. We have, and the things that we said that we could factor in to cut, some of them couldn't even be cut. And then, so whatever we had decided on, if you can't cut it, you can't cut it. And that's concerning to me in the big picture.
Some things do take time. For example, there was a contract with, it was Pro something.
Performance matters,
Yes, sir, I think that's it for
Okay.
27,500. Can't cut it this year.
can't cut that this
So,
year
remember-
because so much of the data collected in performance matters, particularly at the elementary level for science, is where that is collected. FAS disappears this year, but also our federal projects is using that for part of its data collection for reporting purposes. So it was on the cut list, we had cut it, but then we've extended the lifeline one more year. The truancy issue, I think, resolved itself because the person decided not to come back, so that is a cut that was made. I will have to revisit that list
I mean, I
for
just,
you.
we can talk about cutting, but you gotta actually do it. And, it's incredibly challenging for the board to know which are the right cuts because, we are, by nature of our existence, separated from that. We don't have that administrative and to know the impact of, the cuts on students in the same manner that you guys do, but we, that's an area of concern. I'd like to see exactly what was eliminated. It also mentions in here that the busing program was decidedly turned down. And I would argue that it was arbitrarily removed. That funding was arbitrarily cut from the tentative budget because the board never really had that public conversation. That's a huge public conversation, and they never had gave any real directive on it, any official directive. And then, we're talking about the master's program budget is reduced. Well, how much?
Okay. Can I talk
Yes,
about
sir.
that one particularly? Okay, the master's program was a victim of 2008 budget cuts. When I came in as superintendent, there was no backfield for any kind of administrative movement. So we reinstituted it. Now, it's part of the HCA language. HCA and we agree that we probably need to look at it again, so that is gonna be something that's on the bargaining table for this coming year. And I can't give you a number. We could say, let's do away with it, okay? But then we need to watch where the baby goes when we throw out the bathwater. Because there might be, while there is a need for, okay, suppose we have met the need for principals and assistant principals and those people moving in there. We still have a need for those people who might need to get subject area, master's degrees, because particularly at the high school level, there is a requirement for certification, or excuse me, for accreditation, that at least 25% of your faculty has a master's degree. So that has been one of the hooks we've been able to use to recruit people, and we've had to look at it again. Like, we'll say, okay, if you go into it, you agree to work with us for 5 years. One change that could be made in the program, and I'm not saying this is going to be made because I'm really on really short time, is that you might want to defer enrollment in the position or in the program for 5 years of employment in Hendry County with an additional 5 years. So that would be a savings, but I can't tell you how much.
Repeat that.
Pardon?
The 5 years and 5.
Okay, so right now, we allow somebody to go into the program who has full certification and permanent. They're not, so they can go in. That can happen within a year or two of employment. Okay, they get their master's, and that's 3 or 4 years of employment with us. And then we say 5 years, so that's 8 years, unless they agree to pay us back. What I'm saying is you might want to consider, or HCA and the board might want to consider holding off until the person has been with us for 5 years and then let them in the program. Okay, because
That makes sense.
you tend to, if a person's been here 5 years, the chances of them looking at greener pastures or finding better, it narrows down. So those are potential savings that we could just say it's over. But we need to proceed carefully, and I think there are some things that we could institute, or that the board could institute, that would save money. But again, we would have to, like, give you an example of what the proposals would be in order to show you the savings of the money. Now, if I could go back to the contracts, could you and I get together and go over that list again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all
I'd be
right.
interested
Right,
in
and
that
I,
too.
what I heard from you, by the way,
Pardon?
and
I'd
this
be
was loud and
interested in
clear, is
that
that you
too.
prefer better
Going over.
details
Yeah,
in this letter. Because you specifically said, the master's program is reduced, you said by how much? That was probably, first, as you can tell, I wrote a good portion of this, I should have said was reduced by $12,000. It may not seem like much, it was $100,000.
I don't like vague.
Sorry.
I don't like vague narratives.
Right, I appreciate that, and again, I'm learning as I go with you all how you like to write it, or how you like things written. And again, it looks like I may have miswritten this, because what I was trying to say, any change in the busing program was turned down. That means that you all said no. That was my clear point. I was not saying you never decided, I agree with you that you didn't 100% decide for it. You 100% decided we are not making a change, and that's what that statement was trying to say.
We
So
never
any
had
change-
an official board conversation, whether we said thumbs up or thumbs down on it whatsoever. We discussed
You did
in
make-
workshop, but we did not have a vote on that.
Right, at the change, any change, and put the blame on me, any change in the busing program, because that's how, it's fairly liberal in those words, any change in the bus program was decidedly turned down and is included as fully funded. So that was my point of that, is if I made the change under the assumption that we had talked about that, because that's what I had heard. So it was just, when you all caught that, I made sure everybody knew about it. When you all said no, 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 decidedly turned down. So that's number one, that was about as you know, that was $300,000. And the master's program was reduced by $12,000. Both of those numbers.
I don't think it's off the table, but I do think it's something of such community impact that it deserves a public conversation and input from the public.
Right, and again, those numbers should have been in this letter. I
And
will learn
And I don't
from
think
this.
anybody was okay with saying include that in a tentative budget when we haven't even had a public discussion about that. And then the other thing I just want to point out in this letter to my colleagues
and
is.
this letter can be changed, I
Oh, I
understand.
mean, I know, but I just.
I mean, my
these are things-
signature's on it, but, the finance people,
We write it.
But when we're under the risk category, on page 3, when it's discussing risks, and to us, I mean, to me, Anne Marie said it earlier, I mean, that's what I'm grinding on, and that's what I'm trying to make my decisions based off of, the risk reward, yeah. And, I'm just begging, as we discuss this, to pay attention to that first line, that's developed assuming no major fiscal reductions from the current year. I just don't see any way that the state after the elections are over and the legislature reconvenes, that there's not gonna be significant fiscal impact. I don't think they're gonna throw the brunt at us. I know that they have a plan to, kind of, spread it out, but it's still, I mean.
Still there, it's the future.
One of the people I talked to and appreciate most, who's always been a straight shooter with me, said you need to brace yourself for about 2007 again.
For about what?
2007,
When we had the horrible,
when everything,
Okay.
and that was a date that they threw out. This
Here's
wasn't my
here's
personal
what
comment.
the latest that I'm hearing, and this was as of last Friday. The legislative leaders are saying no special session. Okay, that could change, as we all know. The July revenues actually did not decrease, but sales tax revenues did. There were certain things that added to the revenues, state revenues in July, that boosted it up. The one positive, the one less negative to that sales tax decrease was that it was not as drastic as anticipated, but it was a decrease nonetheless. So that you're looking somewhere around a $4 billion shortfall. And what the governor and legislative leaders are saying is we have a $4 billion surplus. That's assuming that there would, you never assume, that they apply that entire surplus to that, okay? Who knows if that's what they're gonna do, but that's the latest we heard from them. Now, take that with a grain of salt and be aware that we have, things are looking really good now, but, 2 days of students back at school, we don't have any issues there, we don't have any outbreaks or anything like that, and I'll go into that later, but things could change. We're celebrating the fact that cases are the same, or as low as they were in June. Well, I want to remind the board that schools were shut down in March with 17 cases in Hendry County. Okay, so be aware that that number can trigger something else, and I'll go into what potential shutdowns could look like later. I'm sorry.
nope.
All right. I have to put tabs on here, or I'll get served backwards. I wanna go to. All right, and I don't know if this is a typo, but on page 14, we have actual 18-19, estimated 19-20. Is that just a typo, or is that a? Why isn't that actual? We should have our actuals by now.
You're right, it should be actual by now. It's just that it's unaudited, so I was uncomfortable putting actual when it's unaudited. The number's tied to what I'm comparing right now for the AFR, so nothing has changed. It just made me uncomfortable to say actual when I know it wasn't an audited figure. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I can change it for next year. Let me think about it, because I have that level of
Where are you at,
caution.
where are you at on the AYP? Are we gonna, what, is it due the 11th? Are you gonna be able to meet that statutory requirement? Or are you gonna need another extension?
Oh, no, I'm gonna do it.
Well, it's concerning to me, as a person who's supposed to be a steward of the budget, to have the estimated here like this,
Well, remember, even what I submit to the state of Florida is unaudited. What we submit to the state of Florida via the AFR clearly says unaudited, because the auditors have every right to come in after that and say things like, you recorded something as an expense that's an asset. Have we ever had that happen? Absolutely. You recorded something in fiscal year 2021 that should have been recorded in 1920. So is that possible? Absolutely. And that's when it becomes audited figures, when they start reviewing it for that.
and when are you expecting this to be audited?
It becomes audited in probably February or March.
February,
Right, that's when you all usually get your final audit report. And we make adjustments to the online ERP software to reflect whatever changes are. Which hopefully won't be many.
Let's hope. On page 9, it's the general fund balance analysis.
Mhm.
On our tentative budget, I compared that to what our official one was. Our committed fund balance in the tentative was 6.9 million. And now, I looked at Mr. Adams like he didn't.
I hit my mic with my tentative.
I thought I did it.
He looked guilty,
Oh.
so. It was Amanda, okay.
Sorry.
And so and that's a spread from the 5.2. Why is there that discrepancy?
That is a great question. The biggest change is based on the beginning fund balance of the, just double checking my numbers. The beginning fund balance for FY 2021 was originally 13.5 because the revenues over the expenditures was about 1.5 million, as I recall. Since then, and again, that's going back to the estimated versus the actual. At that point of time, we were still booking many receivables, accounts payables, and probably a big one that we weren't sure about and still not confident of, but we had to estimate with this, and that's a legitimate accounting at this point, to make an estimate as to how much we owe K-12 for the end of the year. And that was probably $600,000 or $700,000 that we still owe them. So that's why the basic change, you'll see really that the difference between, let me double check before I say that. I remember doing this, but. Oh, okay, so then the operating surplus deficit also increased because we added, let's see if I can say we added $300,000 of expenditures for the 2-mile transportation. We added industry certification funds, about $300,000, which were missing in the preliminary budget. And that should have made up the difference.
Why are, I thought that the certification,
Yeah. That pays for itself. though,
yeah,
doesn't
that's
it?
a self-standing fund.
And I
Yeah.
had the revenue showing, not the expenditures. So that's how I missed it, is we definitely recorded, we booked the revenues, and I didn't have an expense side anywhere. So somebody caught that for us, and we fixed it, so there's about 300,000. And I believe that was it. There was a,
What would the expenditures be on that if we're getting reimbursed? It lags a year, the data, but if we're getting completers, what is the expense up front on that, other than what we've already budgeted, such as a teacher, materials, supplies, and all of that? That's one of the things that I'm questioning.
good question. Good question, I'm gonna have to get back to you.
Okay,
Because I don't know that answer, I just know that that was the,
right.
oops.
There are times of certification that the money reflects the prior year, okay? Now, we may be all blown to smithereens this past year because we were out since March. And that could be part of what the estimate is for that, but it could be that we aren't blown to smithereens. But we just know that sometimes it's a year, it's not in arrears, it's just a year, the funding follows a following year.
As I move forward to page 10. I'm looking at our actuals compared to, this is the first time I've actually got my eyes on actuals for probably any of us have for 1920. And where they line up with what was originally budgeted. And I'm seeing if you look at the bottom, we spent more than we budgeted, as well as in different locations here. And I was always of the belief that, and I believe I'm right, I could be wrong, but you can't spend more than it was budgeted.
And you are correct, first of all, that there is $66 million expended. Of that, about $9 million was for K-12, which was an approved contract. So that ate up anything that we've ever had. Once we take that out, and the board did approve that, and we mentioned at the time there was going to be a cost involved, as I brought it forth, I think when I brought forth that $3 million, the very first payment, I advised you at that time that there would be a budget adjustment for that.
Okay?
So that is the real increase. Other than that, we knew, as you recall, back in February, we brought forth a budget adjustment. The first part was our standard budget adjustment where we increased the budget for for encumbrance rollovers, for new grants, for just general corrections overall. In addition to that, I had added how I thought the budget should have been prepared. I'd made line item corrections, removing the $1.2 million that was the plug figure for salaries and adjusting some of the salaries because I knew it was wrong. I didn't know why it was wrong, but I knew it was wrong and I was trying to make that adjustment. That entire budget adjustment was rejected.
The reason I'm glad you brought that up, because I do keep my receipts. And I have the file from that exact meeting. And the issue, what really happened was there was board member question, there was question in regards to, there was a discrepancy between what was being said that could be cut in salaries. The matrix did not align with that, so we asked for further information on that. And we also asked for further information as regarding if all my notes here. If it was in compliance with board policy. And what was said was, I need to look at it further. The superintendent withdrew it from the agenda, and he didn't bring a budget amendment back to us after that.
The state law allows us to make the budget adjustments after year end. No doubt about it, state law allows us to make budget adjustments after year end. And that's what we're doing next, I think it's on the next agenda.
Well, the narrative here was that we rejected it because we didn't want to make budget cuts. It got rejected by the board because we didn't know if it was compliant with policy and board policy, and we couldn't ever get an answer as to why the salary matrix was not aligning with the suggested cuts.
And I'm still not sure I have an answer for you, but you can see by year end, we had over $1 million surplus.
And we don't have an answer.
Because you're asking me for something that I wasn't able to prove.
We would have to look at that closely because sometimes the matrix gets out, and I can't explain why we don't have that, but sometimes the matrix can get ahead of us, particularly if we have a bunch of retirees, retirements, and we have payouts. So that skews the matrix up. But it should balance and come back into play at the end, so that it looks as if we do that. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened.
$1.4 million spread between it. Like, it was like $225,000 on the lap. And it was, I just couldn't get the numbers to add up.
Okay, well, that's another thing, is I don't have the recollection of that exact number. I'm not saying that you're wrong, I just don't have the recollection of it. But we can get together and work through this and then get back to that. The one thing I wanted to question that you mentioned about our K-12 okay. So that would be reflected as an expenditure, is that correct?
You're right, you'll see that in the 9002 school board and attorney where it's 10,454,639.
Right.
It's reflected in that figure.
So that would be an expense, but we also did not turn all of that money because we get part of that back.
That is correct.
So that
We
would
get that
be,
plus about $300,000, I think is what we ended
so
up
if you
with.
look at that and you see that that's money that we don't generate, they generate it. Okay, through their enrollment, then we keep 5%, so suppose it's 10 million and then we send 8 million out. We still are that to the good, so you could subtract some of that money, and I'm just using an example. I think it wasn't 8 million, I think it was more like 5 million. That money would come out on this bottom line, okay, because it's like an in or out, it's an in and out type of thing.
It just hasn't been reflected in this
It
budget
just was
yet.
not reflected in here in that manner. If you take that out, that brings that 1920 actual sort of closer into line with what we've
It does.
done in the past.
Right,
Okay, so it's not like we're out millions, 3 million. Yes, we probably are because K-12 generated that FTE. We kept 5% of that and the rest of that goes to K-12. So yes, that's an expense, but there's also an income side that comes with that shows how we pay that.
right, and you'll
So
see
it's
that
not
on
a
page
$6
11.
million cost to us.
So why aren't we showing it though?
If you go to
I don't
page
know.
11, you'll see, that's the following page, you'll see that the FY 1920 actual, again, going the second revenue down, state sources, we budgeted 46.2, we came in at 55.7. The primary reason for that, again, is going to be your K-12 contract. So you had.
I'm sorry, where are you at?
I'm on page 11.
Page 11 top.
All right.
So, again, that's about $9 million more than what we expected to get from state sources, and the primary reason for that was gonna be because K-12 came on board.
And
So we had
this-
an increase in revenues and an increase in expenditures.
And we had to use a budget number based on K-12 of saying we're expecting enrollment of 5,000. Because we operated under an enrollment of between 1,800 and 2,000 this current year. And they're already projecting 5,000 enrollment next year, so we have to show that increase in the budget.
Who's projecting that?
I'm sorry.
Who's projecting that number? Who's projecting the
They do.
5,000?
They do.
The state does?
No, the
K-12?
K-12 does, but we're not on the hook until they generate that money.
And that was gonna be my question. If they do not generate that, what does that do? Because I know when we miss it, FTE, we get in trouble.
No. They get in trouble,
Okay.
okay? They do it because they're, first of all, FTE for virtual is not the same as FTE for brick and mortar. Okay, so that is based on what they do, so that is their budget issue.
Okay.
Okay, if they fall short, we know that we keep 5% of whatever they send in, or whatever they bring in, because we're the fiscal agent and send it on through. So we're not on the hook for anything that K-12 does, but they provide us, just like any other planning document that we have, and that's what the budget is this is what we are seeing in our trends for this coming year. If they fall short, Hendry County doesn't have to make up the difference.
They're projecting to grow to double in size.
Exactly, and they're pretty close to doing it. They've already added one position. We have one, they've added another one they already have, and they're advertising for a third.
Good for them. Good for,
This budget includes 1,600. That is what the state current FTE, when they give us the reports, they made us do an estimate. Our estimate, I think, our original estimate that we recommended was about 2,400. The state came back and said, we will not accept 2,400 students for the virtual. We will accept 1,600, and that was it. So this budget continues to be based on 1,600. So when we start getting our revenues will only be distributed to them based on the 1,600 until the state ups their estimates. And we do true ups, that's why I said for the end of the current year, the year that just ended, I had to make an estimate for the true up. So that plugged in my
The state didn't
expenses.
already go up on that 1,600?
No, they did not.
Because, okay,
You're looking at a different figure, not in the FEFP second calculation.
Okay.
It's not in the FEFP calculation yet.
Okay.
I know what you're saying.
and before, I already see the fear coming. We are not stuck, we will do with whatever K-12 generates. Because I guarantee if they exceed that, they're not gonna allow the state to say, you're only paying us 1,600, okay? Again, we're not gonna make up the difference. So that while we built the budget necessarily at 1,600, we didn't build it that high to begin with, but we had that money, and you could look at this on the previous page, you saw how much money came in and went out. Okay, so that will be generated above that if they hit 5,000.
And we did make sure contractually, there is nothing in there that states that we are on the hook for that difference.
Oh, no. And they've been really fair, so they get it. They know exactly what they're in for. That's why they give us these true-up opportunities.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can we put K-12, do they report their actuals, their year-end financials, does nothing like that, all right?
I'm not sure if they're required to. I'll check the contract.
I don't know if they are, but I would love to have it like broken out, outside of the wherever the,
okay. Now, they are a publicly traded company, so they have to file with SEC, but I can make that
I mean, that's,
request.
but I think that maybe in the budget, when we're talking about the income, the money, the revenue coming in, the appropriations coming in, and what's going out, that I would like to see that better laid out.
Because I did include, on page 2, it does say that at the current student level, the 5% administrative fee provides $442,480 to the district.
All right.
But I
that's
can
fair.
provide it probably better in a chart. That may be a little bit easier. Sometimes charts are easier to read when it comes to numbers.
I like the number, I like to see their enrollment, what they're getting, what money's coming through us and what we're keeping.
Okay.
And our check is our finance department, our check on that.
All right, I'd like to take a like 3-minute point of personal privilege. If you guys want to carry on,
Do you need a break?
yes, I need to.
Then let's take a break.
Let's take like a little 2-3 minute break. That's fine. All right, cool. All right, we'll reconvene in about 3 minutes.
And on page 2, I just want to reiterate where it says the budget increase is amount of $8.8 million for K-12. Okay, that's money in that we have to budget, but we pay it out and keep 5% of that. Okay?
You pay what?
Based on this projection that we put in there on page 2 of $8.8 million plus, okay? With the recent count of 1,600 students, they're saying 5,000. I believe they've already exceeded 1,600. We keep a 5% administrative fee, so the 5% of $8,000 would be what comes to us. So $40,000 or $400,000 plus income comes to us. But we are not on the hook for, if we are, then you have like which we are not, but if at any time you don't want to deal business with them anymore, you say, so long, but you have to give them like a school year so they can make other plans.
But we've only been paying them quarterly. So we get the money in before we pay them.
Okay.
And they also reimburse us again for the employee that we have.
Now, the next 2 employees are on their nickel.
Right. We're not
Okay,
doing
we're not doing that. The first employee, we're still talking about K-12.
Okay.
The first employee is Ashley. She's on us, they reimburse us. The next 2 employees, they hire and they pay.
Complete.
Yes.
Nothing out of pocket on us on that one at all.
Pardon?
Nothing out of pocket on us for that,
Nothing.
for the second, the third, and
We're not
however many
waiting
it
on
takes.
reimbursement.
What about the first one, benefits package?
It's all included.
It's all included.
That,
They reimburse
I mean,
us.
they reimburse us for all of that as well?
Everything.
Okay.
Finance prepares a bill once a quarter.
All right, so that being personal privilege on that one. And we have, I want to talk about on page 10, why we are, it's concerning to me seeing at spending more than what we budgeted at locations.
Sure, I can address that. When this budget was prepared, there were some things that were not known. There were many things that weren't known, and that's gonna happen in any budget. And those figures, for example, there's teacher, there was money set aside, $313,000. It was for specific principal and teacher bonuses. We just plugged that figure in one line item. Then when the time comes around, we spread it out. I think the Hope Grant may have been budgeted in one line item. And when the time comes, after, we want it in the budget, but we may not have it in the right slots. I think some of them, I could not track. This year, I think I told you what I did for the budget when I was preparing the budget that you're looking at for the 2021 fiscal year. I went through person by person and where they were being paid out of, what they were doing, and I was making sure of that. Last year, I could not find that there was a track of, it looked like it was just a screen dump or a system dump of salaries, not necessarily a specific line item by line item person. So, for example, take my department again. When I look at my department budget, I could identify, and to the penny, every position that's in there. I could not do that for last year's for any fund. And a lot of that is salaries. A lot of that might be we had either a vacancy, or I think in one place there was just people were being over budgeted, and other places they were being under budgeted. That's why my predecessors were so strong on your salary matrix, because they would run the salaries, they would pull all the salary line items and say, wait, that's not enough. And that's where that $1.2 million or whatever came in. They ran the salary numbers, they ran everything that was in every line item for the 1100s, the 1200s, everything that began with the 1. And then they said, but wait, our salaries, based on the current staff we had, should be another $1 million. So we need to throw in $1 million and then $1 million in benefits, and I think they threw that in the, I think they put that in 9105 or 9205. Anyway, whichever one. They put it in, or they might have put it in both. So throughout the year, those numbers have been modified. The money's been taken out, if needed, and put in the right departments. But that is why. That was just, some of that was simply, all of it had to be salaries that were not budgeted properly. And I think that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I'm not saying I did it right this year. I don't know that I did it as well as I could next year. But I do know that I did better than the past year. And I think my predecessors would agree to that. I think last year was just a hard year, that we didn't really have the continuity. We had 3 different leaders trying to run the finance budget, or trying to run the budget, and that got slipped up. Does that? Other than that, in fact, let me tell you a little bit about purchase orders. Purchase orders cannot be processed unless there is a budget in place. So to that end, let's say that you would like to buy, someone would like to buy a $45,000 item and they've got a budget of $4,000. They can't, it will not, the system will reject it. So in terms of that type of overages, until funds are available, and usually that would be, let's say they get a grant, you all approve the grant, that could become funds available.
So you're saying the majority of these over, what looks like over expenditures in these locations were bonuses and salaries?
Bonuses, salaries, yes.
We'll have to take a closer look at that, because I'm sure salaries, but we don't.
It's not our bonuses, it's those bonuses by the state.
It could be some of the bonuses from the state, but
Right.
we'd look at that, so I don't want you to think that.
It was $300,000 of it.
Because when you're just looking at this, you're like,
But then
Yeah.
you'll see some were not even,
Yeah.
right, some were under, some were
And I
over.
really think one of the big things that is not well explained here is the K-12 thing, that is ratcheting things up when it's really more balanced. But the bonuses would be like for, I
The
don't know, the
performance
school
bonus,
recognition.
yeah,
The
recognition.
recognition,
Okay.
that's the one.
Recognition money, we had several schools who did that and things of that nature. It's not like all of a sudden we say, this is a good year, you're gonna get a bonus.
No,
That
they're all,
doesn't
they're all
happen.
state approved. And the other thing they didn't budget for, and I don't know how to budget for, is so I will admit I did not do this one well this year. First of all, Mr. Basquin's favorite topic is related to salaries, supplements. So supplements were not budgeted last year. So the entire budget showed that not at all. I did include supplements this year. I don't think I did a good job on supplements, plan to do that better next year. Another thing that was not budgeted is when vacation and sick leave payoff. When someone leaves, they might get money either paid to Bencore or they get their
It's
payout. We didn't
K-12,
budget for
that's
that.
where that's being-
So those would show overages, and yet there was funds available. It just wasn't, what?
Why would we not budget that if we know that those things are happening every year? Why
Well,
would we not budget that?
Only because we don't know who. So to that end, let's say that you wouldn't put any money in my department, because right now you don't think anybody's gonna leave.
No,
But where do
no,
you put it?
Well, I wouldn't put it in a department. I would put it in its own fund. You know, this is the sick leave fund that we know and if we go back and we have data, you know, over the past 10 years, we have drawn $25,000 out. Why wouldn't we budget that?
I don't know, that's good. I would be delighted to work on that for next year.
I mean, I think, you know, like you said, we haven't put in there for one of my favorite topics. I think, and you said you did that this year. I mean, it's money we're gonna pay out. I think we need to know where every dime of that is
Right.
going.
As I was
And that
saying,
was kind of why we have done what we've done. Mr. Paletti, you know, I gave him so much heartburn over all of that and everybody else. Now we know if this guy's coaching a sport, this is what it's called, this is what it is, and this is what they're, you know, there's nothing shady looking at all. It's all right there, anybody can see it, and I think we need to budget that out there.
Right, and I did work on that a lot this year, but I'm going to say I didn't do well because honestly, I didn't fully
But Anne
understand
Marie,
supplements.
you've gotta have it budgeted in the salaries, because it's a $700,000 hit.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking $750,000, that's a
It was not
lot of
budgeted,
money.
the
We've
line
gotta
items
put it out
themselves
there.
were not budgeted.
Yeah.
So again, that could be part of the problem.
But somehow or another, I'm sure if we need to look at it, I would hope that somewhere it is budgeted. It's just not in a line item for that. But in salaries, it could be that's part of what the matrix issue is that the board chair was talking about.
Mhm.
But
That's
we'll
what I'm
have to be
thinking.
looking at all that, because if we have, okay, supplements are paid at a specific time during the year. And so in the matrix, if it's not budgeted and then all of a sudden you're paying $135,000, which would be about a fourth of it, then you're looking at somewhere near the number you're talking about being out of whack or out of kilter by that much, but we have to look at that. And we'll have to, you know, fortunately, we're having this budget workshop because we'll get together and work through this.
We do have it in this year's budget, so there's no
And-
question for the
Yeah.
upcoming, for the budget we're in right now, it's there.
Okay,
I put it in there.
In a line item or in salaries?
It is, salaries is made up of several different line items. So for example, you're gonna have your wages, your
Okay.
overtime, your supplements.
well, that's what I was saying, that it's probably in the salaries, okay.
Right, and I have
Okay.
it, salaries right now ties to salaries, the actual, so if you make $22,100 a year and you're the only person in that line, it shows $22,100.
Yeah.
That makes it an easy, quick and tie. If you're eligible for $1,800 a year supplement, it shows in that supplement. So for that was my goal, was to try to make this some sort of, so that the person's, you know, looking at this in the deep line items, which you don't want to do, but if you wanted to, look in the deep line items, you'd be able to see it.
We can find it. That's what we need.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna know that when we're talking about, you know, just what you said there with, you know, wages and then overtime, and you know how that breaks out.
Mhm.
I mean, cause overtime is if it's being paid for out of general fund, that's something as time
Really think,
gets
You all
better.
approve overtime. That's something that comes through them, right, to the board?
it does, but here's the issue. It comes
Incrementally,
to
like
us
a salary.
after they earn it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so what they need to know is, or after the employee can do it. So the more information that we give the board, I think the less confusion we can have.
Right.
Because I think a lot of the things that we're questioning right now are there, but we're just not doing a good job explaining what's happening or why it looks this way.
Mhm.
And it's crucial because I'm downstairs and I keep it in my head and I know what's going on, but, 5 board members are in charge of the budget. And I'm leaving here. So it's real crucial that we paint a very clear picture to the board of what the budget looks like this year, so that you have it, you have the document. And Anne Marie and I will work very hard on this in the next few days.
AFR's in the next 2 days.
Pardon?
Y'all, the AFR has to be my focus.
Okay, all right.
On, controls and other expenditures, item, 9,003. We spent 936,000 last year, and we budgeted 228 for this year. What is that, and how do you cut that much?
I know exactly what that is. That is, we made a adjustment. Let me make sure I'm right.
Because it jumped tremendously from the original budget.
We made an adjustment moving the principal,
Did it have to do with all the fencing that we were doing?
no, but you're spot on. It's the safe schools. What do we, when we pay the SROs? We had the SROs, I believe, paid out of the control and other expenses, and we moved it down per state codes to facilities.
Okay, so if we get the safe schools in and we budgeted in that line item, then that's a one-time infusion of cash, which the next year would drop. And the safe schools was 560, somewhere along that, between 560, 600,000. So part of that could have gone into that budget, or all of it went into that budget. We did the things such as, we had to purchase the practice guns for the Guardians.
Mhm.
We had to do some of the things like, doorbells and things of that nature, which are all part of the safety piece. So we will look at that, but that is probably why it went up and then came back down, because the state did not give us the money again that way.
We did the same thing in 18-19. I mean, actual was a lot higher than we budgeted for 19-20. We budgeted way under. We did
Yeah.
the same thing
But
last year.
Remember what happened in 2018? And that's when Parkland happened.
Right.
Okay, so that's when we started seeing things like mental health assistance and all of that come into the picture. And that's where it was distributed.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's where you have to kind of look historically at the data and see that that was a source of money that we did not have before. And we don't have it this year, so that's why you see the big drop.
A big drop. Okay, that makes sense. If we don't have it, we're not getting it. We
Yeah,
can't budget and spend it.
that's my recollection of the data. I could be totally wrong, but I believe that's where it is.
On page 11, when it's talking about instructional related technology, we originally budgeted 840 and spent 940. There's no salaries in that, is there?
Instructional.
6,500.
Oh, 6,500 is all cap, is all Chromebooks.
Chromebooks, okay.
And Prometheum, I'm not saying the word right,
Prometheum boards, yeah.
Do we see an increase in school administration? Like 300,000? 7,300?
7,300 may be where, the
373.18, would that be the bonuses?
No. I'm trying to, I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I do not remember, and I'm gonna have to look that up, where the safe schools went. Because that may have been where safe schools went. They either went there or operation of plant, and I can't remember. Safe schools being the SRO contract. I think so we'll have to look that one up. You had asked-
So would safe schools be going in that when it shows an increase?
It's an increase over the budget.
We'll look at that.
Okay.
And then I need a little help here deciphering between operation of plant and maintenance of plant. That is what it takes to, those are our utility bills.
Operation
and-
plan is light bill, water bill,
Okay,
and that kind of
Correct.
stuff. Maintenance is making sure everything works.
okay.
Repairs and, yeah,
Repairs.
fix, yeah.
Noted, I'm gonna put that in my little notes here, so I don't mess that one up next
Okay.
time.
It's
All right.
like, it's like changing the oil in your car, that's maintenance.
What? You have to do that?
Yeah, that's not fun.
Well, and
That would explain a lot.
it is a very interesting one because, you know, we've always had, if you go back into the center of the book, is where your original budget documents were. So I was trying to compare, because I don't always know, and I was trying to compare the narrative for 7,900 versus 8,100. And I'm still troubled by, I don't know the difference either. I would actually have to delve in to see which one is being used by whom.
Well, what is
So if you go to
surprising to
page
me.
23 and 24 of the document, that says, operation of plant. This function includes housekeeping activities related to keeping the physical plant open and ready for use. Whereas 8,100 says, maintenance of plant is concerned with keeping buildings and equipment at an acceptable level of efficiency.
Okay, so that would be operation. So we are increasing the budget $318,000. And this is something I'm piggybacking off of Mr. Betts, when I can almost like see us in lockstep here, is, you know, we went through that FP&L project that was supposed to significantly lower that. And so it's surprising to me to see a budgeted increase on that when we were expecting very significant reductions.
I thought Mr. McCarthy had made a change.
We did, hold on, before
Did
we
we
go
ask
too
that
fast
last
for my
time?
little
He
brain.
had dropped it $250,000.
701. That's reflected in
I
here.
think when he discussed it, at that point, he hadn't had a chance. He said it
He
should
came-
be
but
reflected.
He came back and did make a change.
He did get
Yes.
to do that, but it's just not reflecting in here then.
No,
I don't
it's
know.
definitely in there. Our energy costs, which is the 4,000, did go up slightly from the estimated for the current year. Because remember, the current year, we were closed for 3 or 4 months. So the current year, we went down from the actual prior year. So in fact, if you will, join with me on page 23, you'll see the largest, like the operation of plant. That is the largest one that's got the,
Speaking of operation, is the air on in here? It's warm. Anybody else?
I'd never say it's warm, and I'm just gonna say it's warm, but
It's not. it's
All right, we're
something-
a little more informal, I'll move around. Because I too am.
so what I will direct you to is that's 4,000 for the energy on page 23. You've got the actual of 1.4 million for 18-19, estimated 1.2 the fiscal year that just ended, and about 1.2 for the upcoming year. We were uncomfortable dropping the FY 2021 any further, in part because the buildings were closed for so long. And we were closed for March, April, May. It's just hard to compare when you've got when you've got all your buildings that are closed for 3 months. Now, without students in there and things causing the electricity to go, no after-school activities, nothing. So we kept it, we didn't keep it. I mean, we certainly lowered it, the $250,000 that I had originally budgeted, or I originally estimated. He took $250,000 out of that.
I've got a question mark by that one on page 11. Okay.
I believe the change, though, is going to be in purchase services. I'm guessing, maybe, no, that's not it.
What, did you break it?
I did.
Oh, I feel air.
Okay,
It was
good.
on 86 degrees.
Oh, jeez. Mr. Bestman was correct.
Okay, sweat my fat off.
We do hot yoga in here. Yeah.
Yoga, workshops, I like it.
All right, I will verify why those went up, so I appreciate that. One of them, I'm going back to your page 11, either the 7,300 or the 7,900, one of them went up to reflect, or due to, we moved the contract for SROs to one of those. I just don't know which one.
I couldn't imagine they'd be under school administration.
I don't think so either. I'm thinking it was number 7,900 as well. I think it was operation of plant.
So if that's the case, then why would administration have went up?
That's a great question. I don't know. Well, you know what? Let's go back into some of the details. The details aren't full, but let's see. Oh, I know why it went up. School administration. Oh, we moved some money. Something got moved. Anyway, one of those, as you recall, I believe I put $250,000 in there for the Chromebooks. Maybe that's where it is. I'll have to double check for you, if you don't mind.
And when are we gonna have the answers to?
If I brought my computer, I could have looked that one up right now. That's easy.
I think more so I'm concerned about is, when are we gonna get all this finalized so that and when is our final budget due?
This is it. Just so you know, okay, let's talk about that. That's a great question. This is the budget that will be proposed on Monday. Tuesday, excuse me, don't come on Monday. This is the budget that's going to be presented to you on Tuesday for your approval. At that time, I would certainly recommend approval of this budget. If you have any significant changes, or if you've got any, we would certainly, your budget resolution would be as amended. I have to get this into the state of Florida by the 11th. So this document has no time to be modified to any degree. That being said, I'm not saying you all don't have the authority. You can make any changes you want throughout the budget year. We'll have to work through it, preferably after September 11th, after I get both of these uploaded in accordance with state law. This is the AFR.
So after we turn this in, that is our official budget.
Mhm.
So then we have to turn amendments in
No,
to the
the amendments
state?
do not go in. No, they go, we do amendments, you do the amendments. They don't have to go to the state.
They don't have to go to the
I
state?
can tell by looking at the board, they're not, if we find something that is significant to change, we need to present that to them so that they understand what that change is and where that change is taking place before they feel comfortable voting on it.
Without a doubt.
So all of these things that I have question marks, just to verify, at least I can explain things to you or change them for you or do whatever so that when it hits your table, you feel comfortable doing that. Because here's a prime example. Mrs. Busett has an example of something that we discussed months ago that I don't have clear recollection on. The same thing guaranteed is gonna happen to you folks as you walk through the budget year. Okay, unless you keep accurate records of what we want to change when we want to change it. So if you could, I'll let you have those 3 days for your
AFR.
AFR. But we need to get really close and know each other very well for Monday and Tuesday of next week. So that we could look and at least go through and say, what is this, what is
Sure.
this, and is this misplaced?
Right, some of this I can probably do. Like I said, if I had my laptop with me, we could look at a
Yeah,
lot of
right
this stuff
away,
right
and
now.
I've made notes, and,
And again, I don't
Mrs.
want you to
Busett, I
adopt a
hope
budget
gets
you
with
don't.
me before.
Right, I don't want you to adopt a budget that you disapprove of by any means, I'm not saying that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, what you would do is you would approve a budget adjusted for. So you would say, I'm approving this budget minus, whatever, minus the contract for whatever, or minus $10,000 in this line item. So,
And you can still amend your budget as you go through. I mean, you're gonna have, I think, our budget amendments go in next meeting.
yes,
Okay, so you'll have budget amendments for this past year coming to you. I think you're gonna have 2 waves of budget amendments. Okay?
And when are those gonna be given to us?
Thursday?
Yeah, they should be in your packet Thursday.
I'd like to look at last year's, and I meant to dig last year's budget up. What was our budget last year, do you remember?
What was your what?
Last year's budget, 90-something million?
Yeah, probably.
Like 95, 97, is that right? Why the substantial increase to 115 million this year?
I want to say ours was like 102 million, but that is total recollection because I don't have that data with me.
That's still quite, Ms. Houston, do you have that by chance?
That's the one thing I left at home tonight. I think we were like right at 100 million.
It's still $15 million, that's a substantial increase. I'm just kind of
Okay,
curious.
I think
on why.
it will.
But keep in mind, you have K-12 added in there, that's 8-something million that we projected. You have more money coming to the state in terms of teacher salaries, that is 1.04 million.
Right.
And things of that nature that are added to that bottom line. Now, that bottom line, particularly for the teacher salary raises to move us toward 47,000, that's the only thing you can use that for. That's it.
Right.
K-12, we already know how that's expended, that's in and out, but it's gonna be an increase in revenue for our total budget.
Right.
Okay, so it's not like that's necessarily a bad thing, because in that 8 million budget, at least $400,000 comes back to us as profit for being the fiscal agent.
Right.
So that's a revenue stream, that's a revenue source for us.
Right. Yeah, I get that. I'm just
$3
kind of
million
curious.
is gonna be the CARES Act. We
And
had to
the CARES,
budget that for
yes.
this upcoming year. That's the first time that's showing in this document, and hopefully it's you never see it again. But that is a $3 million increase. When you're looking at your budget, all funds, when you look at that $115 million, remember that includes fund balances as well. So for some of your funds, for example, the food service fund, their fund balance increased. The debt service fund balance increased. So as those fund balances increase, that's increasing just because it's included in the total number. I would recommend perhaps only comparing either total appropriations, which is 92.9 million, or total revenues. I think that would be a little bit more, if you're going to do a comparison year to year, that may be a little bit more realistic by excluding the fund balances.
So that does not mean we've spent 100, our plan is to spend 106, as we just outlined, about 14 million of what it looks like.
Right.
Between the CARES Act. Food service is what, 3.5 million or something along, 3 million at least. Okay, and that's not a bad thing, by the way, that we have that money generated for us.
No.
The $8 million for K-12 and so on and so forth, that's where you're seeing that jump. That doesn't mean we have raised taxes or we are spending money that we don't have. That's money that is there.
That's the concern. We've always had a budgeted deficit,
Yeah,
and I don't like that.
right.
And we've shown that in the past, and I've hollered about that for 3 or 4 years, about the budget deficit. We've got to quit going, and we continued it going up and up and up and growing that gap. And so that's why I'm asking.
Well-
And in the years past, we were always shown, okay, budgeted deficit was 1.2, 2.6, 3 and it continued to grow, and it's not showing us exactly if we have a budgeted deficit
Sure,
this year.
on page 9. On page 9 is, again, we've used the same documents that we used last year's budget. So on page 9, you can see, in fact, I think I outlined it a little bit clearer. The actual for 1920, that's the surplus, it's not the budget. 1920 shows the surplus. And then remember last year, the big thing why we were screaming so loud was our operating deficit. Last year was 5.9 million. And we all screamed, we knew, Mr. Paletti knew that wasn't right. We all knew it wasn't right, but we didn't know what do we do? How do I fix it? Put it on, hey, how do I fix it? So this year I presented what I feel to be a solid budget where I can tick and tie, this is again just general fund, tick and tie to the revenues and expenses. And we got $1 million deficit, 967,000. So that, you go back 2 years ago, last year you were at 6 million, the year before you were at 4 million, the year before that you were at $2 million. So your deficit was continually growing. We've brought it back down to something which I will continue to call a manageable deficit because you never spend it all. I budget everything in full, you never spend it all. This will include carry forwards for the future.
Yeah, it's-
It is, $1 million is not, it's not perfect. It does not do what Mr. Besquin and Mrs. Buston and Mrs. Nelson and Mrs. Berg, and of course, Dr. Brown, Reverend Brown were saying. It doesn't do it, but it gets us a lot closer.
But we have moved it in the right direction, and you can keep going in that direction.
We've moved in the right
That,
direction.
my goal was to zero it out for you, I missed it, but I got it to $1 million instead of the buku 5.6 million. Because with this, what I do not want to have happen is to ask you to approve a budget that I know is incorrect, and that's exactly what I did last year. And that's where you thought we were down 4 million. I said, no, it's not that. That's not where it is. We haven't spent that much money. So that's where we are right now. You are making great strides. If we find something further in this budget, we're gonna let you know before the Tuesday meeting individually, of course. And that number conceivably could be less. So I'm proud that we have been able to get this within a manageable level. You know that I've been the one who's always skirted closer to the edge than you probably like to do it. And we're going to be, yeah, I know I have. But there were things.
I wasn't making any eye contact because I saw the Reverend's online sermon, so I was trying to be.
No. I know I did, but there were things that we had to do for this district that just required me to do it. Now we're in a better position, and you're in a better position moving forward from this point than when I came in, okay?
And if I may, I added a program this year. That if you wanted to cut, you could certainly cut it. That's that $250,000 Chromebook. Never had that Chromebook replacement program before funded by the district. And I added, so that is something that if right now you said this is unsatisfactory, we could put that on the line and say it's out. But I think that if you had that money right now, you would say, we need that. That's something that we could, it is an appropriate use of fund balance to, or, you know, it's an appropriate use. Let's do it for another year.
If
So
there's gonna be any cuts, it's not gonna be the students in school.
okay, exactly, and I think that that's what this budget shows is the what's the word, the loyalty to your students. 6 of the schools, I think it was the elementary school, says, Anne Marie, we didn't, when you took away, I did, the textbook money. There was, I think I explained to you all about how textbook money last year was double budgeted, not completely double budgeted, but it was double budgeted. They said, but we were counting on that money next year to pay for Envision, which is some math curriculum or something. So, okay, I've now thrown 120,000, I took the original budget and I said, okay, we've got to add that back in because we can't have them not have their curriculums, right? So that was why okay, I originally said we don't need it, but they did need it. So that's put in, and I think it's not in their individual schools anymore, so it sticks out like a sore thumb. I know not to budget it next year. So there's, next year there's $370,000 that don't necessarily have to be rebudgeted.
I'm interested in the industry certification funds.
Oh, right. See what I did wrong there? I am too.
I want to see if that is, because I mean, I've always been told that that's a standalone program. I know that we gave them some like Kickstarter money right out of the gate to get it off the ground, but that's not something we invest general funds into.
If you're, and
I may be wrong.
if you're right, let's say that is correct. Then at the budget hearing on Tuesday,
Never mind.
what I would
These are from my notes that I was making on page 1.
What I would recommend that you do is, again, adopt the budget except for, so, I can't rewrite this whole document for Tuesday, I think that's my point. Because we're going to have to make the adjustments, you're gonna have to make the adjustments from the dais. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
On Tuesday,
Right.
but you're going to,
I'm gonna look it up to see whether or not that's
you
one.
guys are gonna research and see
We
if
will
we
be
need to make
telling,
those
we will
changes.
be advising if you're gonna make adjustments up here of what those adjustments should look like.
Before it gets submitted as our final.
Because we have to approve that before it goes. So,
Do y'all want to meet prior and not have to hash it out during the hearing, but get here early and
think we had talked about that.
Workshop
doing a
that.
We
workshop.
have scheduled a workshop for you
Okay.
folks for Tuesday prior to the board
Okay.
meeting at 4:30 in Lewiston. So that's already scheduled
That's next Tuesday.
for the regular board meeting at 4:30.
I'll try to be on time.
Workshop before the regular board meeting.
It's very seldom that you're late or not here, so we're gonna have to,
You driving?
so you're always on point there.
Yes,
So I think the point was I was trying to answer your question, we get digressed back about whether or not we were, the use of fund balance, or the balanced budget. And page 9 does show that, so again, we did not remove that information from the budget document.
Okay.
And I'm very interested in the FP&L savings. That is just mind-boggling to me that the links that was gone to and it's not being reflected on.
Yes.
I mean, because I know, and it's in our interest to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do, because they said that they would make us whole if it didn't like meet the goals.
As I read the
And so if we didn't meet
contract,
the goals, I'll want my check.
as I read the contract, I did not see it that clear, by the way. I do not see that they have to make us whole. It's not a written guarantee, so I didn't see that. I read that because I thought, oh, cool. And then there was like some caveat that didn't really mean that they would ever reimburse us or anything.
Really?
No, they sure said that in the
That's
TV.
Yeah, I was
Exactly
gonna say,
I'm-
who drew that, who signed that contract? Then
Well, probably I did as that, but based on what they were told.
Right.
What we were told
right.
is that they guaranteed a certain amount of savings.
Yeah, and if we didn't get that certain amount, then they would make up the difference. Absolutely.
Did that contract go through legal?
Yeah,
And I'm not gonna throw
Legal
anybody
should
under
have
the
caught
bus,
that.
but I'm gonna say it was my predecessor who says, you need to read that carefully, because that's not how he read it either. So when
Really?
I think it was Mr. Yanisek who said, Hendry, I'm not sure, and he knows that, he was pretty good on that contract.
Yes, he was.
He
Did a
did not
good
see,
job
I
with
don't know
that.
if, I don't think he's the one that presented it to you, because when he read it, he did not see that it said that.
He did not. Mr. Veal was on board at that point in time.
that's one that I've got it marked in here,
Yeah,
FPL.
Again, I would be happy to, that's a great plan though, why don't I ask at some point, Molly, to review that, to see, hopefully you all are right and my interpretation is incorrect.
Well,
For the
we know, I
contract.
mean, we know it was stated to us.
Right.
Now,
Or like how it was written.
depending on how the contract was written and nobody caught it, that's a different situation. I can tell you, I'm gonna sell you a Cadillac and paint that joker up, put a Cadillac symbol on a darn Kia. Doesn't mean it's a Cadillac, you know, and if you buy it, sign the contract, it's on you. Not checking into it, reading the contract. So if we missed it, then, I mean, between Mr. Paletti and legal and whoever else.
There was a
we
lot
missed
of
it.
paperwork that went back and forth on that though,
Yeah.
so, again, we could be wrong. Hopefully finance is wrong on that one. And you'll never hear me say that, but hopefully I'm wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I think we need to check in on that though.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, because remember, we had two people recommended that we do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I did, what'd you say?
We had two people recommending that we do it.
Yeah.
I will check with Molly to see if she's got time to review that.
I have one more left, I think. Yes, one more, that's it for me. On page 32. So I was looking at capital projects revenue appropriations. I know that this fund is a fund that we have been previously purchased modulars out of. And what I'm seeing here is in 1920 and 2021, there's no appropriations. And we have a $844,000.
You are saying correct.
Okay, so why aren't we using that money?
I would understand that the district was saving that for probably a major construction in the future. That's what I would be doing with it. But that's y'all's call. I don't know what the long-term construction
Okay,
plans are.
there was time, I'm trying to find it, that we kept $1.2 billion aside out of the capital outlay. And I don't see where that's in there, so you would see that. That figure may now be 843,000 because of the things that we've had to do with fencing and making up the difference, because we got a grant, or we got an appropriation from the state for safe schools, but did it pay for everything? No, it didn't. So we probably have that money left from the 1.2 that we used to keep aside for the event of a chiller or an air conditioner or something that needed to be replaced. But I'll put a big question mark. I believe I'm telling you the truth.
Well, the
on
revenue's
that.
been coming in now. That 269 was real revenue coming in this year.
Pardon?
The 269,000 was real revenue coming in for
Yeah.
this year, so.
Yeah,
That quickly added up to,
yeah.
if it continues
But
to
we
be
used
800.
to have a cap at 1.2 million that you can spend there always has to be 1.2 million there.
Oh, I see, I didn't know
And
that.
so because of the things that we've done, particularly with fencing of all the schools, that's probably why that now says 869,000.
So you're saying this has fallen below our recommended
It's
threshold?
fallen below the threshold, so
Okay.
now the board would be wise to build it back up.
Is that,
Particularly in the event
Don't say it.
that, no, you have a school that's soon to be 50 years old. And when the state survey team comes in and says, thou shalt build another school, and we go to the whole, and this board hasn't been through it before, but we go through the state and say, we want to do a loan payment, you pledge your 1.5 mil back to the state for 3 years. So that means you get everything done the way that as big as you can, because that's your payback to get the extra money. That's what built Clewiston Middle School and built most of LaBelle Middle School. That's also what built Clewiston High School as we go through that. So it would be wise to build that fund back up so that in the event that happens in the future, and you know, we don't see the student growth, but we do see aging buildings, that you have to build a new school. You want to get the schools in as tip-top a shape as you can, because for 3 years, you're not gonna spend any money on them, because you're paying that back to the state.
Which school's approaching 50 years?
LaBelle Elementary
Oh, okay.
is probably in excess of 50 years. I think it opened in
They did.
68, 69.
They celebrated a
Yeah.
anniversary recently.
Oh, I figured maybe that one or Up the Grove, or maybe even the high
Up the
school.
Grove counts as new because it was renovated in
The middle school.
2000 to become Up the Grove from what used to be the middle school or the
LaBelle
6th, 7th
Elementary,
grade.
my son who's 40-something, went to LaBelle Elementary. You did too.
Yeah.
Okay. How old's the high school, LaBelle?
The next one, I think, and I'm going, you know, I'm an old man, I think it's Central. I think it's Central because Clewiston High School is 1988. And I don't know from then I think it'd even be LaBelle High School, which was opened in 77.
Okay. Bunch of them are getting there.
Portables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Paletta, that's actually some really good information, that if he leaves, I wonder who's going to retain all that about when these schools were
I'm
constructed.
sorry.
That's really good information that we don't have anywhere in writing about when these
No.
buildings were
Miss
constructed.
McCarthy knows it because every 5 years the state comes through. You have been
Okay.
been through a state survey.
Okay,
And they look at each place and they measure each room and determine the capacities and they look at your enrollment and they look at the age of the building. And they say that, but off the top of my head, I would say that you probably need to build that back up in the event that you go through the facilities. I think it's a facilities appropriation that you apply for the state. The legislature grants it, you agree to pay back your 3 years of 1.5 million, and then you get the amount of money to build a 1.5 mils, I'm sorry, then you get back the amount of money to build the school, so it's really a good deal
Yeah.
financially. But you need to make sure there's nothing anticipated that's needed at your schools.
Right. So we can build that, start building that up over the next year or two.
In the next year or two, I think easily you could.
And that we would just build up by not appropriating, okay.
Yeah, if we don't appropriate it next year, we'll be there already.
And we have actually some really good local resources who have gone through the facilities appropriation. Janet Story, she was my FSBA mentor, and even though she retired, she's not allowed to retire from that job. And like Mike Presley, and so they're very well versed.
Moorhaven High School was built the same way, I'm telling you.
And so they're very well versed in that, so
Yes.
we may have to call it like a powwow with them, and they're excellent legislative coaches too, so.
Anybody who's done it in Hendry County is gonna be long gone
Yeah.
before you come up. I'll be gone, Mr. Cooper's gone, Mr. Connor, I think, had something to do with, Mr. Upthegrove was the last one who actually pushed it through, and Mr. Connor came to closure with it. So we're all old and feeble, and you need to get new people who understand and get with people who've been through this process.
You're taking group field trips to Tallahassee, kids.
And that is a crucial point, that you have to lobby and then lobby some more and lobby again when, in the event that this happens, because it's not just a one and done deal, because it could, the legislature could spread it over 2 years or 3 phases. Okay?
All right, well, I think that concludes my line of questioning. You guys have anything else?
You
Oh, I will find something to ask questions about.
No, that's because I was talking.
You actually addressed some of the things that I had questions about too. so.
All right, you said you wanted to chat with
I
us?
want to chat with you folks about the opening of school, which has been remarkably smooth. We have an average of 62% of our students are in brick and mortar. 38% are doing or at least 30% are doing distance. We don't keep data on necessarily those who have gone through a private online school. 87% of our teachers are teaching face-to-face. 13% are teaching remotely, and we have been able to accommodate all, I want to say 13 teachers who have doctor's notes to say it's best they not come, okay? I also want to talk about what it would look like. We have been very fortunate. We are trying to be very transparent with COVID cases on campus, and that can cause a lot of confusion, okay? A person who gets COVID is not a leper. It's not as if that, it's what they have, and it's very contagious, and we need to keep people away. So we are putting those people who are testing positive, faculty, staff, and students, okay, as well as those people who are quarantined, so that you have some idea of what's happening. Now, the health department will not come in and shut down the school, but here's what we have come up with, so that you have it on your agenda or radar. If you have a cohort in the elementary school, which could be as low as 18 students, and if you have 60% of those, you can have 12 to 13 students in a classroom. If in any 14-day period there are 2 positive COVID cases, that class will be considered to be shut down.
For
Now,
14 days.
one of the things that we've done, because we had all of last week and the week before to get teachers up to speed on technology, is that we can, on a dime, shut down and go to distance learning immediately. So that's not a 14-day out for students. Learning will still take place, and you went along with that plan. A school could be considered, and I did not say will be, I'm saying considered, because here's what happens. Everybody has a seating chart now, okay? That is just a given on the school bus and in the classrooms. So that if we do have a positive, the seating chart is given to the tracer, who then determines, well, this person, this person, this person may have been exposed, the rest of the class is safe. So that means that we then would isolate those students based on the seating chart. So we're gonna be very surgical and very precise about doing this. At this point, with 2 days in, we have no student issues either in the classroom or on the school bus. But that's with 2 days, so we're very cautiously optimistic with things going the way they should go. If within a 14-day period, a school shows up with 25% of staff, faculty, students out, that school will be considered for shutdown. During the shutdown, intense cleaning and disinfection and sanitation happens. Sanitizing is happening every single day. That's why we have additional, you've used the CARES money to hire additional custodians, things of that nature. In addition, during the day, the teachers are equipped with materials and supplies to disinfect what they might need to be. There is something, everything you read on Facebook is true, okay? I'm being facetious, but that's what happens. There is some concern that maybe what we've put in the classrooms is not advisable for use. Well, we've given the people the gloves and the disinfectant. It is not a spray and wash off type of thing. It's a spray, keep your gloves on, let it sit for 5 minutes, and then wipe it up, okay? So it's not like something you want to spray on your hands, okay? And it says that on the bottle. So some people are interpreting that to mean that it's not safe. It is safe. It meets all the standards, but it has to be used appropriately. Sanitation happens every day, no student cases with the first 2 days. We will consider for closing those places that have in classrooms 2 or more positives within a 14-day period, or in a class, or in a school side, 24%, 20% out in a 14-day period of students, faculty, staff. All right.
20% or 25?
25%, thank you, that's why I said 24. Okay, so at this point, for instance, if you have a school that had 500 students, 125 people in that school need to be tested positive for us to consider shutting it down. Okay?
Okay, now let's take it to, let's go, I love a rabbit hole, so let's go down in this one. Now, the testing criteria is different. So,
Yes, oh, really? Thank you.
You just enlightened him.
I know he was waiting for me to come and share all my knowledge with him. But it would be very challenging to get to 25% if they're not testing people who aren't showing symptoms.
That's
So-
right. So we have actually discussed a plan of coming in and just testing people to see where they are. But then you run into all sorts of issues with that, with people not wanting being tested and all that, and how far are you going to invade privacy and all that kind of thing. So, in other words, it's gonna be a very interesting few weeks, because I expect, we're going to have cases at the school. It's gonna happen. When we have a cold or the flu, it comes to the school. But we're trying to be very surgical and precise and as non-disruptive as possible. we do have people who are misinterpreting. When you go on our dashboard, that is a 14-day running total. It's not cumulative. So that people who have been isolated for 14 days, on the 15th day drop off the list, and so on and so forth. Okay. That's what I had to say. I just wanted to bring you up to speed.
I was checking out the dashboard. Is there some way to put that information on there to just explain to them how to interpret it? This is a 14-day running total. And do we have the quarantine separate from the,
We, asked, I
Positive
don't know,
cases?
has that happened
Been
yet?
updated today.
Okay.
so excited?
At this point, totally throughout the district, there are 3 COVID positive adults. Everybody else, and I think there's a total of 10 who are quarantined.
Now, I do have a question.
Pardon?
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
As far, and it's not related to the COVID as much, what kind of, I guess. Our students that are distance learning, are we feeding them?
Yeah, we can.
But are we? I know we can, but are we?
Well, we have deliveries going out, and they can come to the school and get them.
So we do have that
Yeah,
still
that's
available for them.
always been the plan, and the summer feed program has been extended through December.
Now, I think we need to, has anybody checked exactly what they're feeding them? Because I got a text from a parent the other day that said they sent home a frozen hamburger patty with a high school student with a bun, 2 cartons of milk, a slice of cheese, and they said, what am I supposed to do with this? They said, warm it up. I thought we're supposed to be.
I will check on that.
I thought we were supposed to be serving them ready-to-eat meals, is that correct?
This just came to me during the meeting. This was a LaBelle Middle
Okay.
School meal. I sent you the one earlier about the
Right.
other.
So
Okay. Now, remember to start with,
Right.
we have agreed, all the principals
Wow.
got together, and you're pointing this out on the second day of school, so let's give them a chance to get things going.
This was last week.
That's fine, that was then the 7th day of school. But let's give them a chance to go through, because the whole issue is speed, all right? And principals and everyone agreed to start with one choice. So if you have one choice, that means you have to have the 5 selections that go with what used to be called a Class A lunch. So there has to be a protein, a vegetable, a fruit, a milk, and so on and so forth. The students, if they don't pick that, get the things that they pick. So that's why you would have that selection. So I will get with the Sodexo folks tomorrow to check about a frozen patty. Now, was this given out on a Friday?
No, on, I believe it was a Wednesday.
Okay, so it was it pre-cooked?
He said it was frozen.
Well, it can be pre-cooked and frozen.
Yeah,
They
They
probably
didn't,
just
they
have to
didn't
do it
specify,
microwave.
they just said, I would assume so, because they said you can go home and warm it up. So that wouldn't classify as cooking it necessarily, if
Right,
you're just gonna
as
go to the
heating.
microwave and heating it.
Yeah, so let me check and see what's going on there, but I know that the whole idea, the concept to start with
Mhm.
is speed.
Yeah, and I get that, I get that. I mean, I understand if they threw a couple of peanut butter jelly sandwiches in there and a banana and met the criteria of everything for the speed thing. But as long as you're meeting all of the criteria, frozen hamburger patty with a slice of cheese, 2 pieces, a bun and 2 things of milk, I don't think quite meet that.
It might.
Well, not if it's frozen and not, not edible at the time is my biggest concern part of it.
You know, the reason we got, and I'm gonna mouth off here, it's a full moon. The reason we got in and started doing business with Sodexo was because what was being served to our kids was, I wouldn't want my kids to eat it. And frankly, if somebody tried to push that across the counter to my kid, I would be like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, they're still getting reimbursed.
Yeah.
And what I saw right there, that's not okay. Not on the 7th day of school, not on the 14th day, not on the first
I
day.
will get with them.
And I know that we talked about at the last meeting, the approximate $100,000 from the state that we had considered doing shields, and then we talked about rapid tests.
That's a
Thank you.
good question, I was gonna ask that too.
Okay. It appears that our best, when was our deadline, or has our deadline already passed?
For the 100,000,
Yeah.
September 15th.
Okay. It appears, based on the outline that we have discovered through the schools, that our best bet for that money would be to buy disinfectant and cleaning materials and supplies. If you want us to readjust that and look at testing, testing is an acceptable use, but then how many tests can I get for that much money? You know?
And you can literally, I know employers have retested entire offices because there was one, they tested office, everything was good, they had an exposure, and everybody else had to be tested again.
Yeah.
And then with just the recommendations, the rapid saliva test, even Dr. Pepe was saying that he did not think that was always, they were always accurate. And then with the guidelines on testing, and like what you were saying is, some people probably are not gonna want to be tested.
Right.
And some people probably wouldn't like it if we tested their kids without permission, or, so.
So for all of those reasons, probably the best bet would be to buy additional cleaning supplies and materials for the schools.
Agreed.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you for bringing that up. I meant to talk about that. Okay, I will deal with budget and with food. The food will be the first thing on my call list tomorrow.
So who's gonna handle the appropriation of that money? Will that be Ms. Riccardi?
What we have to do is apply, it's a grant, it's a non-competitive grant. We have to apply for it. It's sort of, well, it is
I
through
think
CARES.
Dr. Monday was already working on it. So.
Yeah, so
We've
what
already
we have to
started that
do
for
is,
it. Okay.
she'll fill out the paperwork and
Yeah, she's got
stuff.
better access to that particular.
Who is this?
Dr. Monday.
Dr. Mundy.
Yeah, Dr.
Okay.
Monday has better access to that.
So she's
system than I
working,
do.
she's gonna work on that, or she already is?
She already is. She and I have been in contact about it. That's why he thought it was me. I think he thought it was me doing it, but she's the one that does the uploading.
I just wanna make sure we weren't dropping the ball,
We're not gonna
thinking
drop
that
that
somebody
ball.
else was doing it.
Yep.
Make sure we are
Dr. Monday
on
and I
top
are
of
working
that.
together on it.
We have done that very well with the CARES Act. It has come
Yeah.
through.
Awesome.
All right, does anybody have anything else?
I'm good, thank you.
All right.
Food, I wanna go home.
Yes, Dr. Bird needs to eat, this is a priority. All right, guys, well, thanks for coming, and our work